In today's sports industry, fantasy players, coaches, and fans are inundated with increasing amounts of data, from historical rankings to live scores to player statistics. The opportunity to turn that overwhelming amount of data into meaningful predictions and useful analytics could well be a game changer. Sound familiar? Innovative and disruptive technology? Is big data and predictive analytics about to impact competitive sports? Greetings, everyone. It's Friday, June 20th, 2014, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. Up to the Tech Talk, a TAG Top 40 innovative company in Georgia that has quickly become the leading provider of predictive data for sports. In fact, it's the only sports analytics company with patented software that merges data from both objective and subjective sources. The only company in the whole wide world of sports based right here in Atlanta that has developed and is already implementing this level of technological sophistication. The Tech Talk focuses on a whole new angle of big data and on CSA, Competitive Sports Analyst, as we meet its founder, president, and CEO, Diane Bloodworth. Diane is responsible for the company's product strategy and manages the day-to-day operations. She's a serial entrepreneur and previous founder of an IT process improvement consulting firm that was acquired in 2003. With more than 25 years of experience in the technology industry, including 9 years at IBM, Diane's IT consulting experience has included assignments with Fortune 500 companies, government, and small business. Is predictive intelligence a potential disruptive technology for sports competition? How will it affect players, fans, and coaches when aided by meaningful information that makes decisions ranging from, which quarterback to start to which players should be drafted in the first place? What's next? Making the calls and the plays in an actual game? It's a look into the future of sports mashed with big data and predictive analytics as we speak with competitive sports analyst, founder, and CEO, Diane Bloodworth. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Diane, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thank you, Frank. Glad to be a part of the program.
What fun. I think when most people think about sports and athletics, we think about, obviously, entertainment, but also there's a whole lot of numbers involved in terms of analyzing teams and analyzing athletes themselves. Sports analytics, an interesting vertical, obviously evolved by way, I'm sure, of cloud computing and some of the analytic disruption technologies of the past several years. But let's go into a little bit about sports analytics and maybe even cover the fantasy industry and why would they need a technology provider, for example?
Certainly. Well, we really, at Competitive Sports Analysis, we really believe that we can change the competition of sports. We believe that analytics are going to play an increasingly important role in sports. And whether you're a fantasy football GM or you're a coach, we think we have predictions and data that can help you win. When you look at the fantasy sports participants, they're all used to using data. Many of them work in the business world, in the financial world. They love having data and projections in order to help them make their decisions about who to draft and who to play.
Mm. So, again, I was touching on the whole concept of big data, although I didn't mention it specifically, but predictive analytics. I'm assuming that a lot of what you're doing is interfacing a lot of the new technologies and disruptive technologies that are being used, say, in banking and fintech and health IT and retailing, and applying it to sports?
That is correct. We have patented technology where we take kind of our secret sauce, if you will, is to look at all that statistical data. That's an input into our algorithms. But we also have some data points that are subjective. We love our stats. We know they give us good historical data, but we believe when humans are involved, that's not the only factor. So we have some subjective data points that we feed into our algorithms as well.
Can you pick a triple crown?
I didn't. I was pulling for California crime, so no, I'm sorry. I didn't predict that one, but I'd love to. I think that would be great. We really, right now, what we're doing is predicting the player's performance, and we predict that based on how well they're doing. They're, in that particular season. We also look at any injuries. We look at the players around them, especially with football. We don't just look at the quarterback. We look at the offensive line. And then we look at how offenses and defenses stack up against each other, how they've done. And we take all that into consideration when we're making our player predictions. But I'll work on the triple crown for you.
I'll call you.
Yeah.
One of the things that in reviewing some of the information for our discussion today, I was really, really impressed with the fact you're running 60% accuracy on your ratings. Tell us a little bit about that.
Certainly. Again, we believe it's bringing in both that mixture of objective and subjective, and we participate in a number of, especially on the fantasy sports side, we participate in a number of contests where, they're looking for who is the most accurate. And we've hit as high as, 65, 66% on some of our positions like quarterbacks and others. So we're always looking to tweak those algorithms and find ways to improve.
Well, with that kind of success and with the growth and expansion for CSA as far as reaching into different audiences, have you considered the concept of maybe what's next for the sports tool?
I'm sorry, say that again, the last part?
What's next for the actual the actual service?
Absolutely. So our most recent product is for college football coaches, and what we do is predict the fit of a recruit for a college football team. And we brought together to do this. We brought together software developers. We brought in Mike Hagan, who is a former NFL scout and really knows how to evaluate football recruits and talent, and we brought in algorithm analysts. And combining these three, we have come up with a way to allow coaches to really customize their recruiting data and determine that fit of a recruit for their team.
Do you actually cross into the consulting aspect, or is it just static data that they interpret themselves?
I guess you could say we crossed into the consulting aspect of it. My background, I've done a lot of consulting, so maybe I didn't realize it, but we are stepping a little further into it in that we allow the coaches to say what skills are important to their program, what skills are most important to their schemes and style of play when they go in to rate a recruit.
Now, talk about the relationship from, say, I'm thinking financially speaking, the licensing of your data. How would that work?
Well, we're looking at a couple of different ways to license the data. We're talking to some mobile app developers that develop sports apps. And we believe, and they believe, this is a really way for them to have some unique content and predictions in their sports apps. So we're in a couple of discussions for the football season where they would license our data. Another interesting aspect of that is sports bars and other retail establishments. We're looking at providing a ticker tape of our predictions that they can put right on the bottom of a TV.
Wow.
And engage the fantasy sports enthusiast or just the general sports enthusiast with some unique content, again, with those predictions.
Well, I think it obviously, in an objective reality in terms of what my opinion might be based on my own experience versus some of the information kind of feeding into the enthusiasm, I could see that really would enhance. It's still going to be, as I think to a degree you're mentioning, a certain level of subjectivity, a certain level of injury and weather and a whole lot of other considerations that can maybe change no matter how much predictive information you have. And yet hearing the percentages might entice the energy level a little bit stronger just because it adds that much more data to it. Talk a little bit about, I think as you were describing some of the licensing aspects, I was intrigued by the prospects of, do you see this, from the standpoint of what happens when you deal with two teams that are fully vested in your technology? Is it a case where you've ever run into two situations where the clients are fully armed with all of your predictive information, and do you measure the outcome of knowing predictive information?
Yeah, we haven't seen that yet. That would be a good problem to approach when we have that. But you're right, and I think it will come down to how they really leverage those analytics and that information that we're providing them. You used the word earlier, big data, which is kind of a buzzword in our industry right now. And, what we really try to do is make sure it's not just big data, but it's really useful, valuable information that helps them make smarter decisions. We want to distill it down to, analytics that are meaningful and helpful, whether you play fantasy sports. If you do, we're going to give you a fantasy points prediction, or you're a coach, and we're going to give you some very specific information about your player or a matchup against your opponent's player. So I tell you what, we'll write a business case on that. I like the idea of having two teams go against each other that are both using our tool set, our Scout Pro tool set.
Well, the day will come. It'll be just because how successful you guys are in the adoption of it. I'm thinking that if I'm on one team and I don't have it, I'm going to feel like, hey, call her up tomorrow and let's get this going, because I don't want to have to play against a team that's got that kind of information. The other side of it is I got to relate something real quick to you. I was involved in politics and was elected as city council in the city I was in, and we had a general election. We had a tie, so we had a runoff. We had a tie the second time. The third time, I won by one vote. And for 4 years, they call me landslide. So
I love it.
I got to ask one last question, and that is, with something as creative and innovative as what you're doing already, where do you see this in a year from now?
Well, we really want to be that provider of data, whether you're picking up your mobile app or you're in the Falcons. It won't be ready in a year, but their new stadium, we'd love to have some of our data going across the screens in their fantasy football lounge. We want to help those fantasy sports GMs win. I'd love to see a number of college teams using this, and that we're looking at other sports where we can take this technology. And, it'll go beyond recruiting. It'll go to game planning and strategizing as well. So we want to be that extra tool in the toolkit to help people win. And in a year from now, I'd like to see us across multiple markets and in multiple sports.
Well, I think the layers and tentacles, it'll hybrid on itself, and the more that people use it, the more you'll discover more uses for it. Well, Diane, great stuff. Really an interesting aspect to the evolution of your personal career, and I know from your background and reputation, you've got a high interest in sports and are active with the Bulldogs and football and that kind of thing. And so I guess, it's one of those things about following your bliss and taking your talents and capabilities and applying it to an innovation and creating a disruptive business that's making a difference. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for what you do for TAG, and thank you for taking time to be with us today on Tech Talk.
Thank you for having me on the program. I enjoyed talking to you, Frank.